Welcome to Volleyball State, your look at volleyball in 6 rotations. Here are your hosts, Jeff Sheldon and Lincoln Arneal.
Hello and welcome to Volleyball State, a look at the sport of volleyball in 6 rotations, a proud part of the Hurrdat Sports family. I'm Jeff Sheldon.
And I'm Lincoln Arneal.
Hey, college volleyball is back, and it feels so good. We're going to break down Nebraska's opening week. Huskers start 3-0, although it was far from perfect at times. So we're going to talk about our first impressions of Nebraska, where the Huskers still need to grow, heading into another busy week of volleyball. Plus, one of the great things about college volleyball, big-time matchups this early in the season among marquee programs. If this was college football, we would call them helmet games. Well, they're jersey games, and they're happening every day here at the start of the season. We're going to recap some of the highlights from around the country. Number 1 Texas versus number 3 Wisconsin is just finishing up right as we're recording on Sunday afternoon, and there's plenty of big matchups that we are going to chat about. But first, Lincoln, fill the folks in on the stuff that they need to know before we get started.
Yes, we got lots of good stuff. You can follow our show on at Volleyball Pod on Twitter and TikTok. You can follow me on Lincoln at Lincoln_VB on Twitter. I'll read all of my writings and game tweets. Sometimes Jeff and I talk to each other on Twitter, and it's fun.
Sometimes we talk and it's not fun too. Like if we're yelling, if we're mad.
We're bickering. But yeah, you can read all my articles at Huskers Illustrated. I have a Substack newsletter, Volleyball State, that comes out once a week at the end of the week. And I also do short video recaps too. If video is your thing, you like watching Volleyball State on YouTube, you can watch me do game recaps on YouTube as well too. So all the places you can want your social media more than probably most people want in their lives. So come get it. Come get all the
I want to throw in one more plug for the Substack, the Volleyball State Substack. Lincoln does a great job with this. And, if you miss the show and you're just looking for like a right to your inbox description of the big things going on in college volleyball each week, Lincoln takes care of that for you. Once again, how do people sign up for the Volleyball State newsletter? And it's absolutely free at this point.
Yes. Volleyballstate.substack.com, I believe it is. So you can sign up there. Yeah, I have second week I've done it, and I've been surprised by the feedback. So I'm glad that people like it, and I'll have some regular features in there. I'll highlight the podcast. But yeah,
you're just like wringing your brain out onto a Word document and turning it into a newsletter, and it's really good. So like, I should do more to read it and prep for this show. So you're actually helping me prep for our own show.
Well, good. Well, we got a lot. Speaking of that, we got a lot of good stuff coming up today. We'll start with rotation 1. We will recap Nebraska against Kentucky. Rotation 2, we'll talk about the Emeritus Players Challenge. A bunch of teams came into the Devaney Center, played a bunch of matches. We'll talk about all that. Our first, and then we'll kind of talk about a big picture. Our first impressions for Nebraska. 3 matches in the first week. What went well? What areas does Nebraska need to improve? Then rotation 4, we will kind of do a landscape, who's playing who in the first week, what are the results around the country. Then we'll look ahead in rotation 5 for Nebraska has 3 more matches coming up. The grind doesn't stop. And then we'll close up kind of, again, another big picture look, talk about some of the rule changes that are going on and some things they tried at the AVCA showcase. What worked, what's still a work in progress, and what excites us about what we saw during the first weekend. So we got a jam-packed show. We're going guest-free week 1. We're giving our guests a long weekend off, so we're excited. It's just Jeff and I this weekend. Great show ahead.
At least we hope so. We're going back to like the OG Volleyball State days where it was just Lincoln and I talking about volleyball, but we've got a lot to get to. We're going to dive into rotation 1, Nebraska's big season opening win down in Louisville at AVCA First Serve Showcase. Lincoln was on location at the KFC Yum Center to watch Nebraska take down Kentucky in 4 sets. Lincoln, I thought we could start with what we were impressed by, the good things for the season opener, and get into some things that we thought need a little bit of work. And the player that jumped off the page in Nebraska's season opening win over Kentucky was Rebecca Alec. And both Husker middles actually had really good matches. Rebecca Alec was outstanding. 11 kills, 1 error on 15 swings. If I'm doing the math right, 10 divided by 15, that's a 2/3 hitting percentage, which is .667. Oh, by the way, she also added 12 blocks, which I believe is a season high. And if not, it's very, very close. So 11 kills, hitting 667 and 12 blocks for Rebecca Alec in the season opener. Not too shabby. Andy Jackson jumped in and added 10 kills of her own and 5 more blocks. So that was the one thing that jumped out of the box score to me. And watching on Tuesday night, Nebraska's middles look like they have really come to play this year.
Yeah, and it felt kind of weird too. Is the 4-team 2-match tournament. Rebecca Alec was named the MVP of the showcase too, but she kind of really, you don't see out middle blockers do that. A lot of the awards usually go to outside hitters or the more attention grabbing pin hitters, but she really dominated Nebraska's match and really kind of controlled, very active, which you want to see out of her. And she really kind of set the tone, both attacking and blocking too. And this is, I don't know if this is a carryover from the Rebecca Alec we saw during the tournament. She had a run during the NCAA tournament where she was posting double-digit blocks, and it carried over. It didn't always carry over the next couple of matches, but it's good to see her against elite competition really step up. And I think they did a very good job too, but Kentucky they weren't as sharp as they may have been late in the year too. I was a little underwhelmed by their offense, which we can talk a little bit about more later, but she got what she did, what she could work with, and really put together a good performance.
Yeah, I mean the middle blocker won the most outstanding player of this tournament, partially because the pin hitters didn't exactly have a night to write home about. Nebraska won this match, controlled it in large part. You never really felt like Nebraska was in danger of dropping this match, but they weren't super sharp either, which you probably expect for a season opener. I even thought, the players who you can usually count on for Nebraska to be the steadiest, like Lexi Rodriguez or Bergen Riley, it was the first match of the season for them too. And Lexi Rodriguez, I think, would tell you she missed a couple of digs that she would normally get maybe later in the season. And the pin hitters and Bergen Riley were still looking to find their connection. But still, Nebraska hit 258, which isn't too bad for a season opener. And that was largely skewed by a real struggle that they had in Game 2. Game 2 was the set that Kentucky won to even up the match 1-1. And then Nebraska came back and won Games 3 and 4. If you take out Game 2, Nebraska hit 349 on the night, which is really, really good. So not as bad as it might have felt like at the intermission. Nebraska cleaned things up over the second half of the match. Just 5 hitting errors for the Huskers in Games 3 and 4. Kentucky, though, was really high error. There wasn't a point where Kentucky was kind of able to clean up their sloppy play. Kentucky was really, really pin heavy on the night. I have it down here a little bit later in the notes, but Brooklyn DeLay and Aaron Lamb, Kentucky's outside hitters, got almost all of their swings. Their middles might have combined for like 15 swings. And then Kentucky was kind of sending their serves all over the place too, with 16 service errors. So the match was won by the team that played the cleanest. And even though Nebraska, didn't have all the screws tightened in their game, they were certainly a little bit steadier than Kentucky was.
Yeah, I mean, Brooklyn DeLay had 58 attacks too, and Aaron Lamb had 32, and then their other opposite, Megan Wilson, had 24. So they were only pin.
That's 90 swings between the two outside hitters in the first match of the season.
Out of 151 total. So that's a lot. So they went there. That's why I said it's kind of predictable. And Emma Grohm is a very good setter for Kentucky too. And I think that was the one question. They lost a couple middle blockers to the transfer portal and tried to bring in some new ones. And I don't think that the chemistry is quite there yet. So we'll see what happens up. The one thing that I think Nebraska struggled. I mean, Mara Beatson kind of came on late. She finished tied for the team high with 11 kills too. But Lindsey Krause and Harper Murray just didn't seem themselves. And I don't know whether that was the balls that they were getting from Bergen Riley weren't where they needed to be, or kind of put them in compromising situations, or Nebraska was playing out of system enough that they were dealing with a lot more junk. But they really kind of struggled. I mean, they struggled to terminate. I should say they weren't. Neither of them were high error. I think they had a combined 4 hitting errors. But Lindsey Krause had 7 kills on 26 swings. Harper had 8 on 25. So just it wasn't sloppy, but just you expect a higher termination rate from those two.
Yeah, and I was listening to, it was Jalen Reyes who did the post-match radio interview, and this was brought up, and Jalen had an interesting explanation for it. Nebraska was out of system a lot of the night. against Kentucky, and Jalen said there was some communication challenges between the outsides and Bergen Riley during those out of system plays, and it's on the outside hitter to kind of call verbally what kind of sets they want, but when you're out of system, Bergen can't always make the sets that the outsides are calling for. So if the outsides aren't waiting to see what kind of set they're getting and they're running a route that Bergen just shouldn't be expected to make during a play, if she's 10 feet off the net on a pass, then it's going to look bad. And in volleyball, sometimes it is difficult to assign blame to how a point went wrong. Did the setter send them a bad ball? Did the outside not make a good swing? Jalen said that the outsides probably needed to be calling for some different sets under some of those circumstances, and to the outside's credit, they weren't putting bad swings on them and making errors. But we're going to talk about some of the numbers here in just a little bit that jumped out to me. But there were a lot of long rallies in this match, and Nebraska just wasn't as terminal as you hope that they develop by later on in the season.
Yeah, it is. I think it was a good match. You never want. It's a tough challenge to start a season against a top 10 team in Nebraska. They passed the test. They did what they needed to do, and like you said, I think to start this, it never really felt like Nebraska was not in control. Even that one match where they struggled, they were tied at 20-20 and had a chance to finish it off, and just Kentucky was the one who did late. But Nebraska, even when they weren't playing the sharpest, relied on their defense and just kind of relied on their block to remain competitive and remain in the match.
One of the themes that I kind of saw over this first week with Nebraska is it feels like the Huskers need to just be a little bit more assertive, take bigger swings. The serve against Kentucky was in system a lot more than you hoped they would be. Because of Nebraska's service pressure, or I should say lack thereof. Nebraska did not really challenge Kentucky all that much from the service line. Nebraska does end up with 4 aces. 3 of them came from Lindsey Krause, so a nice night from the service line from her. But, Nebraska did not really challenge Kentucky, I felt like, that much from their serves, which is a big credit to Nebraska's block and floor defense, that they were able to make some saves, even though Kentucky was able to run some in-system offense. I thought Nebraska's serve receive in the Kentucky match needed to be tightened up a little bit. Kentucky was really, especially in the first half of the match, able to go on some big service runs. I think in game 1, there was like a 6-0 run from Kentucky where Nebraska got aced a couple times. Kentucky was also able to put together a big run midway through game 2 after Nebraska had a lead, and Kentucky came back to win game 2. So maybe just first match things. You're playing in a big arena against an opponent that I think is going to be pretty good. Like Kentucky is going to be a top 10, 12 program and challenge in the SEC this year. And so, we're nitpicking here a little bit, but, it was not an A+ match for Nebraska in that regard.
But you mentioned their block did a lot of good work too. Kentucky had 31 more swings than Nebraska, even though, and they had 4 more kills. So that's a lot more attacks with very little more return out of that production too. So Nebraska was getting they weren't getting a lot of points off their block, but they were sending a lot back and making Kentucky try different things and try numerous attacks.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that really opened my eyes when I was looking at the box score later. In volleyball, it is not common for one team to have a lot more attacks than the other, just because the nature of the game is it goes back and forth and back and forth. And so both teams are going to have about a similar number of attacks. Maybe one team will have 5 or 10 more swings than the other over the course of a match. And when I look back over Nebraska's box scores last year, most of them were that way. Nebraska had 31 fewer swings than Kentucky. That means that Nebraska was scoring points in ways other than kills. So Kentucky made a lot of service errors. They had a lot of hitting errors. Nebraska had more blocks. And then, like you said, Lincoln, Nebraska's block was actually sending the ball back to Kentucky, not bounce blocks, but Kentucky was maybe getting 3 swings in a point before Nebraska did. There's only one match I could see last year where there was a huge jump or a huge difference between Nebraska's swings and an opponent's number of swings. And that was the match Nebraska won against Wisconsin in 5 in Lincoln last year. I think Wisconsin had 40 more swings than Nebraska did that year, or that match, or maybe Nebraska had more. I'm sorry. I think Nebraska had like 40 more swings than Wisconsin. It's because Nebraska was getting blocked so much. Wisconsin had like 18 blocks in that match. But it's just sort of one of those weird statistical anomalies that will jump out at you, is that Kentucky took way more swings than Nebraska did and still ended up losing this match in 4.
Yeah, so against that Wisconsin match, Nebraska had 193 attacks and Wisconsin had 157. So there's quite the disparity. But you look at the scores were similar. From the Kentucky match to what they played on TCU, and in the TCU match, Nebraska had 16 more attacks. They had 141 to 125, and Nebraska is the team that won. You expect maybe the team that had more. With the wins in the match to have a few more because they're terminating the ball, making fewer errors. It was weird to see that big of an anomaly. Just kind of Kentucky have that many more, but it's a good sign that Nebraska's block was reading it. But they were putting pressure on Kentucky to make plays, and I think Kentucky kind of buckled under that. The last 2 sets, they had 20 errors and 22 kills. Those final 2 sets, they kind of buckled under the pressure that Nebraska's defense was putting on them.
Well, when Kentucky was so pin dependent as they were on Tuesday, Nebraska's block doesn't have to guess very much. And Emma Grome's a really good setter, and so I was kind of surprised that was the offense that she ran. Brooklyn DeLay, Kentucky's great sophomore outside hitter, had a match high 19 kills for the Wildcats. But as Lincoln said, she did take 58 swings. Erin Lamb, I thought, was really impressive. Their other outside hitter had 14 kills. It was really impressive to start. She did kind of cool off as the match went along, and both of those outsides hit below 200. It'll really jump out that Kentucky's middles only took 22 swings combined. Like they were getting no sets, and while Nebraska's middles really kind of feasted in their on their side of the net. So that's Nebraska, Kentucky. Go ahead.
And their middles both hit negative too. I mean, Jordan Daly had 1 kill, 2 errors on 10 swings. And then Brooke Bultema had 4 kills, 5 errors on 12 swings. So the middles were, not only would they get many, but they weren't doing much with the ball when they were set, both hitting negative. So.
So Nebraska starts off 1-0 with a win over number 7 Kentucky? Number 9 Kentucky to start the year, then comes home to the Emeritus Players Challenge as we move into rotation 2. Lincoln, I don't have a ton of thoughts on Nebraska versus Texas A&M Corpus Christi. That was the Friday night match. Nebraska dominates this match in the way that you would expect them to. And, the only thing I really have to say about it is you could tell this match was going to be quick early. Nebraska led 10-0 off the serve of Bergen Riley to start game 1 with 3 aces, and it was kind of off to the races after that.
Yeah, then you had 3 kills from Rebecca Alec in that, 3 kills from Lindsay Krause, and a block. So it was Nebraska was the one controlling it. It wasn't like Texas A&M Corpus Christi where it was high air, but yeah, I started to write my game story after that 10-0 session. Like I think a little bit it was nerves. They were playing in their first match of the year and a big and sold out. That was the second largest crowd ever in Devaney behind last year's Wisconsin match. So 89.
Did they add more seats this year, or was it just more standing room? Or
standing room was quite full. I looked up there before the match started, and it was a pretty solid line of people. Last year at Wisconsin, there were people that were 2 or 3 deep in some parts, but there was a solid line of people up there. I think there's just anticipation of this, all the hype. It's really excited, and they didn't care who it was. They wanted to be there for the season opener. So I think that all played into the Islanders were just a little bit nervous to start. And Bergen Riley, she served tough. She was yo-yoing the ball and kind of having the bottom drop off right in front of the defenders. So that was the key to the match, and really that. But I think not only that started Bergen's good, but she had an amazing match too. She had 4 kills, 36 assists on 72 attempts. So
this was her best match of the opening week, I thought.
She had five aces. She added 2 more aces later in the first set too, and then 10 digs, which was a team high. So she led the team, and obviously assists, aces, digs. She had 3 blocks, so tied for the team high in blocks. Wow. And then had 4 kills on 5 attacks. So that was one of the better matches I've seen from her, just all around. And maybe she's had better setting distribution type, but as far as controlling the match, that was the best match that I've seen from her in her 2 years.
The beneficiary of Bergen Riley's setting on Friday night largely was Lindsey Krause. Nebraska's senior outside hitter had 13 kills, hit 478, which, pretty darn good for an outside hitter. The middles once again came to play, 13 kills on 20 swings, just one error. So let me do the math real quick. That's a 600 hitting percentage. So once again, the middles were dominant against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, which you would expect when Nebraska's got a size advantage like that. Huskers hit. Let's see what I don't have Nebraska's hitting percentage in front of me for this one. 427, not bad. So yeah, Nebraska takes care of Texas A&M Corpus Christi like you would have expected.
Yeah. The other key point of this, Taylor Landfair got in to play the third set. She made a very token appearance in the Kentucky match. I think she played in the front row and then played a little bit in the back row. Didn't get an attack at all. So I don't think she had any official stats. Let me check the stats to see if she recorded anything. She had a serve receive.
Against Kentucky, you mean?
Against Kentucky.
Yeah.
But she was largely just didn't. But she really came in this match and played the entire third set. Had 5 kills on 10. So she was pounding the ball. I think that's the Taylor Landfair we expected to see in that. And so it's good to see. Layla Blackwell also made her Husker debut and terminated on both of her swings. So the third set, I was expecting more lineup rotation, but it's good to see those two newcomers get in there and look as build.
Yeah. Well, what I was kind of expecting to see, and I think this is going to be something we're probably going to talk about here over the next couple minutes, is you wondered how much lineup rotation Nebraska was going to show on Saturday against TCU. If this was your starting lineup for the first 2 matches, and that's largely who played, were you going to see maybe Taylor Landfair or Layla Blackwell get a little extra time on Saturday against TCU? And it didn't really work out that way. Nebraska had to fight in this one. They were kind of on the struggle bus. Nebraska wins the match 3-1. Could have swept, although it was one of those kind of odd matches where the first set and the finale were blowouts. Nebraska wins them by at least 10, but the middle 2 were deuce games. Nebraska wins game 2, 25-23, and then loses game 3, 25-23. The offense certainly did not look great. Nebraska finished at just 213 hitting percentage for the match, and they had to hit 417 as a team in the finale in game 4 just to get there. If you look at the first 3 sets, Nebraska's offense just clunky is the word that I like to use for it. Nebraska's, a lot of long rallies. The outsides were getting swings. The passing was good, and they just weren't terminating. John Cook had some pretty strong thoughts on that in his post-match radio interview there. The player who did step up kind of at the end, Harper Murray, had 20 kills in this match to lead Nebraska, but the next highest hitter for the Huskers only had 9. That was Lindsey Krause, and Krause hit 129. So, Nebraska passed the ball really well in this match, Lincoln. And so then it's like, okay, is it the second touch or is it the third touch? And what John Cook said is we just didn't attack very smartly. He actually used the term dumb hits, a lot of dumb hits when Lauren Cook was asking him about it in the postgame. And, it reminds me again that Nebraska is not the team, not the program maybe, that is going to really they're not going to play the beautiful game. They're not going to set your hair on fire offensively, at least not the way that they're currently constructed.
Yeah, I think this is a Nebraska team that has built this reputation on defense and kind of keeping the ball alive, waiting for opportunities to find kills or waiting for the other team to commit an error too. So, and Harper Murray really had, you mentioned 20 kills. She did have 7 errors. She was on pace to have a really good, but then had 3 straight hitting errors that kind of when Nebraska was up 22-21 in that third set. Even for as bad as they played, they still had a chance at a sweep and couldn't get it done there. So but then because Harper had 7 kills in both the third and fourth, and Nebraska really cleaned up. She had 7 of their 11 kills. Nebraska with just 1 hitting error in that fourth fourth set. But to me, the other really nice part that what Nebraska did is we kind of talked about this against Kentucky is they shored up their serve receive. Melanie Parra, they played Oklahoma on Friday night, kind of the first match of the day. Melanie Parra had 7 aces against that. I think they had 11 as a team. Against Nebraska on Saturday, they had 0. And really just, I mean, Lexi Rodriguez did great. Lainey Choboy was back there. Olivia Mauk, really kind of that, and Harper's the other kind of major player for serve receive. I mean, it wasn't always perfect, but they didn't give up any points and they kept the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember a lot of overpasses or just kind of free ball generating from TCU's serve. So they kept the ball in play and gave Nebraska a chance a lot too. So that was one of the highlights to me was Nebraska's serve receive.
Yeah, Nebraska's passing was great on Saturday night, I thought. At least they weren't out of system a ton. Nebraska just wasn't terminating. And you look at some of the error numbers, Lindsey Krause had 5 errors. Merritt Beeson, who has not had a strong start to the season, had 6 errors to go against her 8 kills. Rebecca Alec, who was playing like a first-team All-American in the first 2 matches of the season, came back to earth on Saturday against TCU, had 7 kills and 6 errors. And there was a series of plays that jumped out to me early. Nebraska's running the slide, which is one of their favorite attacks with the middles. And you can't just hit the slide sharp cross all the time. Like teams are going to start to take that away. And Nebraska just kept pounding slides into the block. And you're like, what are they seeing or what are they not seeing? I watched a little bit of this Texas-Wisconsin match that just finished up on Sunday. And on her first collegiate swing, or one of her first, Aiden Ames, Texas's middle blocker, who was a Nebraska commit for quite a while before decommitting and going to Texas, hit a slide and tooled the outside hand of the Wisconsin blocker. And it's like, that's a polished player. That's really smart. And so you just want to see Nebraska's attackers kind of not just trying to pound sharp cross, but find fingers, find the edges of the block and get those tools going. But it was just a really high error night against TCU. And I think that's as frustrated, I think, as I've ever heard John Cook talk specifically about the attacking choices that his team has made.
Yeah, which again, they didn't change their lineup at all. They rode with their main hitters the entire game too. And we saw Taylor Landfair very token role, and Skylar Pierce hasn't played yet this season. So I don't know if he just wants them to work through it or just kind of, I don't know why he didn't make any changes there.
What he said was on the post-match radio interview, because Lauren Cook asked him right away, why didn't you bring in Taylor Landfair? And he's like, well, I was going to, but I thought we were going to win game 3. He thought that they were going to pull it out and finish a sweep, and he just wanted to kind of wrap it up and get out of there. Well, then they go on to game 4, and I think Nebraska got out to such a strong start in game 4. He didn't bring her in. That would have been a great place to bring maybe Landfair in at the start of game 4. Instead, this leads me to believe maybe they're hazing Taylor Landfair or something. They brought her in at the very end when the match was well in hand, and then I don't think she got a set. So I think there might be an opportunity coming up in the next week for her to get some more extended, deliberate playing time. But, the name of the game still is, can you put balls away? If you're an outside, it's great if you can pass. It's great if you can block. In the college game, though, can you put balls down? Can you be a Sarah Franklin or a Madison Skinner? Nebraska, just in games 2 and 3 alone against TCU, took 93 swings, which is a lot. I mean, usually you're getting maybe 30 or so per set. And that tells you that Nebraska was in a lot of long rallies where they were getting swings and they just weren't terminating. So whatever sort of is ailing the Nebraska offense at this point needs to get figured out, because the level of competition is going up starting this week.
Yeah. And that's TCU got their blocking balls. They had 6 blocks in the second set and 3 more in the third too. And that just kind of shows you that Nebraska wasn't making the best decisions as far as what shots to hit. And again, a lot of them were just right into cross court into that TCU block. The other thing I wanted to highlight, though, that I thought Nebraska did well on was I think mostly it was good. It was their serving. They did record 9 aces and by 6 different players. Recorded an ace too. The one caveat with that is that yes, they had 9 aces, but directly after 4 of those came a service error. So you get, hey, you good job, you get a point, and then you immediately give it away on the ensuing serve. So, but I think Nebraska, serving definitely won them this game. Between their 9 aces, TCU had none, and then I think that really, and they also, I mean, they had 11 service errors to 13 for TCU, so there was kind of that.
I don't know if this is more of a nationwide thing in college volleyball or just like we've seen Nebraska do this lately. There's a lot of serving errors, and I don't know if teams are just trying to get the ball on people faster and be more aggressive in serves. But between, TCU commits 13, Nebraska 11. Like that's a fair amount in a 4-set match. And between Nebraska's 25 hitting errors and 11 service errors, they gave away 36 points. And that was kind of another contention that John Cook had in his post-match interview. I don't know what he told you guys after the match, but he goes, we work way too hard to give away 36 points without making the opponent, kind of work for it. And some of those came on blocks, but still, like when you're spraying balls out of bounds, and I think, he's especially frustrated when some of these serves fluttered into the net and didn't even give the opponent a chance to try to make a decision on it. I wouldn't be surprised if next week had some intense moments in practice, but it's a busy week next week because they got 3 matches.
Practicing, yeah. Harper Murray did say, that Cook does much prefer serves to go long rather than into the net too, because like you said, at least they have to make a decision and they show a little bit more aggressive. Or if you're serving into the net, they have to do absolutely nothing, where they can mentally check out. So that was definitely what I thought. It's definitely their kind of mindset, and we'll see if that gets cleaned up, because that was a problem early part of last year too. They had this run there of double-digit service errors where they would give up free points to the opponent. So
yeah. So let's step back and take a little bit more of a big picture look at Nebraska over the first week rotation 3. We've kind of pointed out some weaknesses here. Let's go to the good news first. These are my thoughts, Lincoln. I want you to chime in, kind of with yours as well, especially if you disagree. The middle attack is looking really good. Nebraska is a team that maybe historically has been a little bit. They have not gone to the middles as much as they could in certain situations, while Andy Jackson and Rebecca Alec are certainly getting fed in the first week of the season, and they're largely, being really impressive. So in the first week of the season, Andy Jackson's hitting 476. You look at Rebecca Alec, she's at 415. Both of Nebraska's middles being over 400 at this point in the season is really, really good. And, they've combined for 49 kills, and that's, both of them have about as much as Nebraska's leading hitter, Harper Murray, who's got 33. So the balance is really good. Bergen Riley is doing a great job finding the middles. I thought, up until partway through Saturday night, Rebecca Alec looked much, much better offensively, hitting some gap sets, putting the ball straight down. I think last night she did not. Bergen Riley didn't do her a ton of favors at times last Saturday night, because some of those sets were low, and you can't set Rebecca Alec low because, she's the likelihood of her hitting it out of bounds at that point just goes way, way up. So the middle attack, I thought, has been outstanding over the first week of the season.
And the one thing I thought too, we didn't touch on it during the match, but I think the timing on the slide with Alec was just off. Like there was a couple where she was reaching back and just didn't give her many options too. So I think hopefully that was just a one night aberration, because she's usually looking pretty good on that slide too. But yeah, from Rebecca Alec winning the MVP of the Meredith Challenge to Andy Jackson just kind of really being terminal almost every time she swings. I think Nebraska, you always beg for set the middle. They've hopefully unlocked something there and can continue to do that especially with the passing they have, which kind of leads to the next point too, is their back row I think has really been good. And it's not the typical back row. Last year, Lexi Rodriguez back there playing libero. Lainey Choboy has been a defensive specialist, but they've also used Olivia Maxo. I think a lot how it's worked is Olivia has played back row for Lindsay Krause, and then Lainey plays back row for Harper Murray. But both in the Kentucky and against TCU, they switched where Lainey then came in for Merritt Beeson as well too. So they mix and match whoever maybe is feeling it. It's kind of nice to have either Harper or Merritt, Beeson in the back row, because they do add a little bit to the offense with that. But the back row defense has just been really good. They're keeping balls up, and what they allow the offense to do is to have those chances to make those hits. But they're getting those opportunities because the defense is keeping the ball up.
Yeah, teams are going to have a real hard time getting tips down against Nebraska this year, as long as the front row players kind of stay out of the way and let them take them. But between Lexi Rodriguez, Lainey Choboy, what she's able to do to get things up, and Olivia Malk, the freshman, has been as good as advertised over this first week. Nebraska's back row. If you're Wisconsin right now, what would you pay to have Nebraska's back row? Because I think that's kind of where the Badgers are weak at this point. But Nebraska's back row has done a really solid job getting them into offense, playing pretty good defense. Even though I thought there were some balls I thought Nebraska should have got up against Kentucky that they did not. The last couple matches were really, really good. And I think, if you're Nebraska too, you're got to be encouraged by the depth that the team has shown. What have they had? 3 different leaders in kills in there, 4 different leaders in kills.
There's a tie. Beeson and Alec the first night. So four leaders in 3 matches.
Yeah. So, Alec, Beeson, Harper Murray, and then it's Bergen Riley is having a lot of choices that she can go to, and you like seeing that. I think the serving's been all right too. I mean, not super challenging. We talked about in the Kentucky match, they did get Corpus Christi out of system quite a bit. You need to see the errors come down, although I feel like we said that every single show last year too, and it never really happened all that much. But they're not taking themselves out of the matches with them yet.
Yeah. I think it's just kind of that whole thing of give yourself the opportunity that with the defense, with the serving, don't give away free points, keep yourself in the rally, and let eventually you'll get one down or the other team will mess up too. And I think I don't know if that's John Cook's philosophy, but he said every time you make a hitting error, you serve one out, you're stealing a dig from Lexi Rodriguez. So that's you want to give her as many chances as possible.
More stat padding. I'll throw in one too that we didn't have in the show notes. For stretches, Nebraska's outsides have looked good. There are times, Lindsay Krause had an outstanding night against Corpus Christi on Friday. Harper Murray, had struggles a bit in that second set against TCU, but really turned it on at the end. That those players can both have outstanding nights. You just want to see them do it over the course of a match or a couple of weeks, and not, turn into error machines and really, really be terminal, because they got an All-American kind of breathing down their neck on the bench. That sort of leads to one of my concerns, at least in the first week of the season. I'm really surprised by this, but Merritt Beeson has really struggled in the first 3 matches of the season. She's hitting 0.95 in the first week. She did lead them in kills against Kentucky, but didn't have a super high efficiency. What did she hit last year? She hit around 300. I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's like in the 280s. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me right now, but 0.95 over the first week of the season with, let's see, 25 kills, 17 errors. You're not really used to seeing that from Merritt Beeson. Has committed, some service errors as well. If I look this up right here, she has got a team high 6 service errors for Beeson too. And so, you figure Merritt's going to tighten things up and really come on in a little bit. But Nebraska doesn't have an obvious backup to go when Merritt is struggling, or God forbid gets injured or is sick. So she's kind of the option right now. And so thank you, Lincoln. Hitting 280, she hit 282 last year, 0.95 in the first week. Long season, a lot of ways to go, but Merritt Beeson, not a real terminal start to the year for her.
And what I noticed too is that when she gets one-on-one, she puts the ball away. That's where she got a lot of her kills against Kentucky, because the middles were hitting so well that that middle blocker for Kentucky was pausing, waiting to see the ball was going before making a decision. And when Bergen would fire the ball to the pin to Merritt, she'd have a one-on-one she could terminate. Where she's struggling, to me this year, is when there's a double block up there. A lot of the errors that she has is because she's getting blocked, not because she's hitting it long or hitting it wide, but a lot of it is just into that block
Mhm.
because I don't know what's going on or what's about that. The tendency so far is just struggling to put it down, and that hitting percentage falls as a result of it.
Well, a lot of times, when you're out of system, especially if you're going into a double block, your back row's got to be communicating to you what the shot to hit is, whether it's high line or I'd love to see Merritt, just try to tool a little bit more and go high flat or aim for the edges of a block. The best pin hitters, when they're out of system, like that's okay. They're not trying to crush the ball inside the block. They are, breaking someone's fingers and getting a kill anyway. So, Merritt's got some time to come around, but 0.95 in the first week of the season is not the start that you would want for Nebraska's senior All-American. The other thing that we've already kind of touched on a little bit, Nebraska has all of these options with the transfers they brought in that are on the bench and have not had very much playing time yet. And that's Taylor Landfair and Layla Blackwell. Nebraska's middles, for the large part, have played really well in Rebecca Alec and Andy Jackson. So I can kind of understand why Blackwell hasn't had a lot of opportunity yet. And I would be very surprised if all of these players didn't get more time in the Husker Classic coming up this week when you're playing Montana State and the Citadel. But you had to think that this was a possibility too. When you bring in a player of Taylor Landfair's caliber, people are going to want to see her play. Or if one of the outsides is struggling, wondering why she's not been given a shot. And it would surprise me if she wasn't given a shot here in the next week or so.
What was the old adage? Is the most popular person on campus is the backup quarterback?
Quarterback.
Yeah, Taylor Landfair is the most popular person on campus. I mean, I know it's not say she's going to disappoint when she gets on the court too, but because she has got such limited opportunity, and she did look really good in that one full set that she did play against Corpus Christi. So we'll have to see that. And I like you said, I was a little surprised they didn't change it up because they did play back to back. That they might want to give them nights off, but I would be surprised if. I'll be surprised if they don't, between the three matches upcoming this week, if Blackwell and Landfair don't start one of them, just because it's the second week of three matches. There's a travel involved again. And I think there's a couple other big matches in mid-September that Nebraska needs to hopefully save some legs for to figure out some lineup combinations.
I will throw out just one caution for everyone who's, cautiously getting tickets for the Taylor Landfair bus. If you're looking for a player to come in and not commit a bunch of errors, Landfair has been a pretty high volume attacker in the past. She has her fair share of errors. It's not like she's necessarily going to come in and hit 300 every match. So, just know that going in is there any high volume outside hitter is going to commit some errors.
Especially when you hit it as hard as she does. I mean, she is a power hitter. If you're hitting it, you lose a little bit of control if you're hitting it as hard as she does. So I think that's what you get the good with the bat too. Hopefully there's more good with those terminations.
She was hitting in like the 230s in Minnesota, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. The other surprise too, we hinted at earlier, is that Skylar Pierce hasn't played too. I think we don't need to. I'm not going to ask this week, is she going to redshirt or not too? But I think we'll see how this week goes in kind of mid-September. That's a question you start asking because, if Taylor Landfair and Layla Blackwell aren't playing too, then, Skylar Pierce is kind of behind her on the outside hitter depth chart too. So if Landfair's not playing, that leaves even fewer attempts for Skylar Pierce to play too. So I don't think there's any reason to cause suspicion or ask that red shirt question yet, but hopefully
what I would be interested in knowing though is if they do they have a plan with her right now that is definitive on, we're not really looking at red shirting her, we want to give her some action, or maybe the answer is with the players that we have right now, if we reach a certain date and we haven't got her in a match yet, then we're going to try to preserve that year. Or is it just like, we're going to take it week by week? Because I think, in this day and age of the transfer portal being so readily available, coaches have to be super transparent with players about what their plan and their intentions are, and everyone's kind of got to be on the same page about it, because that was, one of the criticisms of why Caroline Juravicius left last year was, I don't think her family and the coaching staff were necessarily on the same page about what the plan for her was going to be, and now she and Maggie Mendelson are starting at Penn State. So I'm not sitting here like pulling the fire alarm about Skylar Pierce. It's just everyone's kind of got to have a really transparent conversation about what the plan for the season is going to be. And, if there is an injury or there's a real need for someone, that plan can always change. But Nebraska right now has 3 players on their roster that were the number 1 rated outside hitter in their class. And the only one who wasn't was maybe Lindsay Krause, who was certainly top 3. And so you've got a lot of talent on that team, way more talent than, to be hitting in the 240s for the year as a team. And so, it's just the first weekend. There's a lot more time to play, but there's a lot of talent that year, and that drives up the expectations for what you hope that this offense can achieve.
Yeah, you hope you have a defined role for her, and she's not just coming in to play the final 5 points against Montana State just to say that she played a match, and that I don't think that's going to appease everybody. So again, just no need for panic yet. Just keep an eye on the next week or two, see how that develops. So that's it. So let's move around to rotation 4. A lot of great volleyball. So one of the wonderful things about volleyball is there's some juggernauts going up against each other the first week. If you stayed up late after the Nebraska-Kentucky match, you got to see another I thought good, and I was a little surprised with how things turned with this, but Wisconsin won the first set, but then
this is Louisville, Wisconsin, right?
Louisville, yes. Louisville came back and won the next 3, and they look pretty efficient doing so. They're not flashy. They don't have a big headliner, but they just got a lot of weapons. And Ellie Glock, they're running a 6'2". Ellie Glock from Wahoo is one of the 2 setters, and they just kind of eventually pummeled Wisconsin down and suppressed them and ended up winning in 4.
Well, let's give full credit to Louisville, who Nebraska is going to play in a couple weeks on Sunday, September 22nd. This is a team that went to the Elite 8 a year ago, and I think were they in the Final Four 2 years ago? They've got some, you say they don't have any stars. I know they've got some real solid players with and experienced players. So Charity Looper and Anna DeBeer are great hitters. PK is back in the middle. I think Elena Scott is a wonderful libero. Like, this is a very, very talented Louisville team that Danny Busboom Kelly has this year. And you don't beat Wisconsin if you're not really, really good. So Nebraska is going to have its hands full on the 22nd with the amount of talent that Louisville has. Wisconsin always seems, at least the last couple of years, to just not be quite fully healthy. Jenna Orzel has had her health problems at Wisconsin. Sarah Franklin certainly doesn't look like she, missed part of the summer with a foot injury. She was really good against Louisville, but I think as we could talk about too, and when we get to Wisconsin, Texas in a bit, Wisconsin's weakness this year, if they have any, at least at this point, is the passing is maybe just not quite to an elite level. They're trying out 2 different liberos. I don't think have settled on one yet, and just that back row might not be as an elite a level as Kelly Sheffield would hope it is.
Well, and we'll talk about the rule changes, but Wisconsin actually is using their 2 different liberos for 2 different purposes. One is a serve receive specialist, and then one is just a back row passer. So, after whatever the other team is serving, one libero's in, and then they switch after and when they're serving too. So it's a very interesting.
So it's like a side out libero strategy.
Yeah. It's like
interesting.
They're switching. It's not by who's playing well, but by which team is serving depends on who is in there.
Yeah. Louisville takes down Wisconsin, and then I don't know. Do we want to talk any about just move it up and talk about Wisconsin, Texas?
Sure.
Right now, Wisconsin ends up starting the year 0-2. They played in these 2, I don't know what you call them, showcase events, playing in the ABA First Serve on Tuesday, and then they played in the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee against Texas on Sunday. Match finishes up right as we started recording, but Texas takes that in 4. First set went 30-28. Texas wins it, and then Wisconsin comes back and wins game 2. Texas steadies after intermission and wins games 3 and 4. For the first match of the year, Texas looked as impressive as you thought they might. They are loaded at pin hitters. The setting question for Texas, there is one now, because Ella Swindle, who set them to the title last year as a true freshman, did not play for long stretches on Sunday. It was Avery Carlson, the Baylor transfer, who came in and set the second half of that match for Texas. But when you have pin hitters like Madison Skinner and Reagan Rutherford, the Kentucky transfer, and
Jenna Wennis.
Jenna Wennis. I was like, I almost said Wooker. It was the other Minnesotan, Jenna Wennis, on that team. And then you got Aiden Ames as a true freshman starting in the middle, and their other middle's a true freshman too. Like, Texas, once again, is loaded.
Redshirt. I think Marianne Singletary redshirt freshman, but and Carlson actually, she had 34 assists to 12 for Swindle. Did start the match too, but then they kind of went to Carlson midway through, and she played the entire second set and really kind of controlled that. So Texas looked very good. They got lots of options. But Jenna Wennis actually led them with 18 kills. And Skinner was dominant that first set. She had 8 kills in the first set and only 7 the rest of the match. But she established that she's a bona fide and again going to be a National Player of the Year contender. But to switch a little bit with Wisconsin, they got Sarah Franklin. She had 25 kills today. The rest of the team had 26 combined. It's finding that secondary attacker. Devin Robinson and Anna Schmarek were decent, but then Trinity Shad Series, she's playing the L2 position right now while they wait for Julio Orzel to get back healthy. She had kills, 6 errors. So I think, and that's what to me also.
And she's a true freshman, I believe, too. Yeah.
She's also a really good, I think, long jumper from Canada. So she's a super athlete. But that's also what stood out to me that Louisville is they don't have a number 2. I mean, Franklin can terminate from anywhere on the court, but they don't have that threat on the left pin when she's in the back row to really kind of put the ball away. And maybe Chad Series will get better as the season goes on, or Orzel will step into that. But it's they need to find that number 2 attacker, whether it is Robinson or Smrek or Carter. Carter Booth only had 3 kills, which is a lot lower than you expect.
Yeah, keep in mind, Wisconsin, too, starting a true freshman setter, Charlie Fearbringer, who is, supposed to be the bee's knees, and I'm sure is outstanding, but again, is a true freshman and will have a learning curve in college.
And they get Stanford on Monday, so what a way to break in a true freshman setter is
absolutely
Louisville, Texas, Stanford. Good luck.
Well, since the entire rest of the country has now been added to the Big Ten, I guess as I look at our national landscape, we've got more Big Ten scores to talk about. And one of them is one of the newcomers, UCLA, goes down to Atlanta and is undefeated on the weekend. They knock off the host school, number 14, Georgia Tech, who Nebraska saw in the Sweet 16 last year. They win it in 5, 16-14 in the 5th. So UCLA, a nice start to the season with Alfie Reft, the U.S. Olympic assistant coach, back on the bench.
The 2 sets that they lost 11 and 10. So they won the first set and then lost 25-11, 25-10, and then somehow flip it.
There's some weird scores that we'll get to a little bit later on in the show. The match that I actually stayed up to watch more of too this weekend, number 4 Pitt, who, by the way, is going to be really, really good again this year. They've been to the last 3 Final Fours. They went up to Eugene and swept number 10 Oregon at Matthew Knight Arena, 25-12, 27-25, 25-23. Pitt, again, got 13 kills from Tori Stafford. Valeria Vasquez Gomez had 9, and Olivia Babcock, who was the National Freshman of the Year last year, had 8. And so Dan Fisher's got it working again this year in Pittsburgh. They're going to fight with Louisville for the top of the ACC, as well as with Stanford, who I just remembered is also in the ACC this year.
Yeah, it's okay if you forget that. You get a free pass for that for the next couple of months too. And that was one of the. I think Pitt had one of the more impressive weekends. Again, you talk about they controlled and never really looked threatened. They won the first set 12, yes. Then the next 2 were deuce games, but Pitt looked good. Also, shout out to Oregon. That was a very aesthetically pleasing game to watch. The trees are gone from the court, so I enjoyed.
They have a Terraflex 4 that isn't like the Lost in the Forest basketball court up there. Thanks for doing that.
That was great. Other Big Ten news: Penn State had and Tennessee played in a reunion of former Huskers. Like you mentioned, Maggie Mendelson and Caroline Juravicius both started for Penn State, and Hayden Kubik started for Tennessee. I thought they had a fairly good match. A little bit learning curve. I mean, Penn State really relied on Cameron Hanna and Just Mruzik, but I think Juravicius and Mendelson were like their 3-4 attackers. And then Kubik was their number 2 or number 3 attacker for Tennessee. So making the most of their opportunities. Penn State looked pretty good. Tennessee had a tough start to their weekend, but they're really challenging themselves. And but yeah, it was good, kind of fun mini reunion to watch.
Penn State also starting a true freshman setter this year, Izzy Stark. Purdue, who we're expecting big things from this year, knocked off Kansas State. We look here locally a little bit too. UNO, the Mavs took Houston to 5 sets and lost. And then they're playing Washington State today. And is that match over? I thought they won that match. We can look that up.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, so absolutely. So and Creighton got a big start to their year as well. Jays look really, really impressive. They swept North Carolina State and Missouri. So that match is actually coming up a week from Tuesday. Creighton, Nebraska. A big addition for Creighton this year, had a great start to her Jays career. Elise Getzinger, the 6'4" middle blocker from Kentucky, had double-digit kills in both of the Jays wins and hit over 400 in each match. So it's not like Creighton had a lot of missing pieces, but Elise Getzinger might be certainly adding another strength to Kirsten Berthal Booth's crew. The Jays start 2-0 with wins over Missouri and NC State, and we're going to see them on Tuesday night, a week from this coming Tuesday, in the Devaney Center, maybe the most highly anticipated Nebraska-Creighton match in the series ever.
Yeah,
I'm gonna. Go ahead.
Omaha lost in 5 sets to Washington State. They always Omaha loves to play these 5 sets, but they
blew them out in game 1. I'm pretty sure. Maybe that's why I thought they ended up winning the match.
It was well. I looked this up on the. I looked this up on the NCAA Sports website. Their scoreboard had all sorts of bugs on it this year, flipping scores. So if you look up scores on the NCAA website, take it with a grain of sand, because they had Iowa losing to Liberty, but Iowa didn't.
That didn't happen. You're saying
they
that
went 2-0 down in Puerto Rico. So shout out to the Hawkeyes for winning, starting the year off. Yeah, but it's 15-13 Washington State in that third set. So tough.
Yeah.
I mean, Omaha's pushing. I mean, Houston's an NCAA tournament program. Washington State's they look very differently. They lost their coach Jennifer Green, who went to West Virginia, but they're still a solid program, a perennial postseason contender. But Omaha pushed them to 5.
The oddity of the week is Dayton, one of the best college, mid-major college volleyball programs in the country, draws a record crowd when they host Ohio State, over 4,100 fans in Dayton. And yet the match was declared a no contest. Why is this, you ask? It's because there's no air conditioning at Dayton's arena, and it was so hot that the match had to be abandoned, I believe, in the 5th set. So Dayton and Ohio State, I guess you could have called it a tie. They call it a no contest. It will not go down in the scorebook as anything. And so Dayton and Ohio State brought all those people to Dayton and sent them home empty-handed. So we're apologizing for that.
Since the match was a no contest, does that mean that their record attendance is also a no contest? I assume it would have to be.
Well, I mean, they're keeping the money. They're not giving the money back. I tell you that. All right, we're going to move into rotation 5, our look ahead to next week. Kind of another odd schedule week for Nebraska. They play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So Tuesday night, Nebraska's going down to the Metroplex to play SMU. And so, Nebraska gets to be in on the Iron Skillet trilogy with TCU and SMU this year. SMU pretty darn good. It was 26-7 last year, reached the second round of the NCAA tournament before losing to Texas. And so, this is going to be a tough match for Nebraska. They're not going to sleepwalk into Dallas and beat SMU. This is going to be SMU's home opener because the Mustangs went out to Hawaii to play a pair of matches this past weekend. They dropped a 5-setter at Hawaii in a match that they won game 1 25-7. And then every other set was close. There was a couple deuce games in there. And then I think Hawaii won game 5, 15-13. So SMU pretty good. They bounced back to beat San Diego, who's always very tough. A receiving vote San Diego team 3-1, where they hit 313. Player to watch for SMU is their senior outside hitter, Jamison Wheeler. She had 17 kills against San Diego, and she was a first-team All-American Athletic Conference pick for them last year.
Yeah, this is the Allie Batenhorst Invitational with no Allie Batenhorst. Her sister, Casey Batenhorst, is a junior setter for the Mustangs, but SMU came up to Nebraska last year, and this is the return trip that apparently, I'm guessing Nebraska promised to go down there, but SMU is a good, no matter how many Batenhorsts are playing in the game, it's a good RPI game, especially to go down there in Dallas. So, so that'll be on Tuesday. Then Nebraska is back home on Thursday, so a quick turnaround against last year's darling, the Citadel.
Darling for our show. I don't know how many other people consider them a darling.
They should have.
We were all over them.
They should have been. I mean, they started last year 23-0, then stumbled down, didn't make the tournament, but they're back. They started the year 2-1. They played in a tournament at Alabama. They lost to the host, but picked up a pair of wins down there. So we'll see. It should be a good match, and they aren't undefeated, but I think that they put together pretty good. So it's again another good RPI game, even though that the name of the opponent won't likely wow you. It should be helping Nebraska as far as posting RPI.
Saturday, the Huskers are going to play Montana State. Montana State put up a fight against Washington in their season opener on Friday. Washington won that in 4, but Montana State did take a set off of them. They're actually going to be playing this evening against Middle Tennessee State in their second match of the season. 2 Nebraskans on Montana State's roster, to keep an eye on. Junior outside hitter Madeline Siebler is from Omaha West Side, and then from down in my neck of the woods in southeast Nebraska, they've got a redshirt freshman outside hitter Carly Heidemann from Diller Odell, who you might remember if you watch a lot of state tournament volleyball in Nebraska. So a couple of local kids will get a chance to come to the Devaney Center and suit up for the Bobcats on Saturday.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd schedule where those teams are in town Thursday, and then I believe it also is this Denver's weekend to come to Nebraska.
That's right. They don't play.
They'll all. I mean, the Citadel and Montana State will play on Friday, and so will Denver and the Citadel. So there's some good. If you want some volleyball on Friday night, go to the Devaney Center, watch it there too. So let's quickly, we got a little bit of time left. Let's go to rotation 6. Just kind of, again, we've hinted at this a little bit, but a new season, new rules. They tried some new things at the AVCA showcase on Tuesday, but just wanted to, we had thoughts. We're going to share them. But my biggest takeaway this year is there may have been a lot of panic, a lot of people upset. They're worried about the future of volleyball since they eliminated the double contact rule. But I've seen nothing but positives. There's a couple.
Not one of those people. I did not care that much.
Mainly it's setters. I think that their craft is going to fall apart. But
all the old setters are like kids these days in the double contact rule.
From what I saw too, I mean, there's overblown. I kept thinking as I was watching when a non-setter would set the ball, like, oh, that would have been a double contact last year. But it's great because the play continues, and I mean the rallies continue, and they're still playing volleyball. I mean, from my high perched up seats in the Devaney Center, I can't always tell which way is the ball spinning, but it's minuscule and it keeps the play going, which I think is good for the sport.
Yeah, I'm fine with the elimination of double contact. It's only when it's on your side of the net. So if you do play the ball over with two hands and you create a double contact, they're going to call you on that. The other one of the other rules is the two libero rule. So you can't play two liberos in the same rally at the same time, but you can suit up two liberos and use them throughout the match. In the past, you could only have one player in the libero jersey, and if you wanted to switch, you had to wait until the end of a set to break week to do it. Nebraska did that a couple times over the years, but never played two at once. And we've got some high profile teams kind of already taking advantage of that, right?
Well, probably Tennessee was probably the prime example of that. They were playing Texas last year when their libero got hurt, and they couldn't substitute anybody till the end of that set, and they lost that set because they didn't have an extra defensive player in the back row. So they did suit up to liberos, and they are probably a major proponent of that. We talked about Wisconsin's doing it. That's one approach teams are taking is you can have a serve receive libero and a passing libero. And then TCU dressed, I think only one played, but they did dress two. I've also heard some talk of one's a serve libero and then one's a passing libero. So if you have a really good server and maybe your main defensive specialist isn't a good server, you can do that, but only one libero can serve it. You can't have one libero serve for one middle blocker and the other one serve for the other. They can only serve in one spot too. So I think it's more teams may embrace it, but it's the teams that are using it are taking advantage of it so far.
Well, and the other big thing that we saw at the AVCA First Serve is the use of the Bolt 6 replay system that you would have seen in like the Pro Volleyball Federation or the Olympics. This is great. Normally, I am not all for AI taking human jobs, but if we can improve pace of play, get line calls right, get touch calls right, shorten the length of challenges, away from the 10 minutes that they're like currently at, and we can get a match over in 2 hours instead of 2 hours, 45 minutes. Oh my goodness, let's do it. And the Bolt 6 replay worked really well in Louisville. I see you have here, they didn't have sort of the image that the officials are seeing and that we were seeing at home on the TV.
You were, okay.
We were able to see that, but it was not broadcast to the fans and the media in the arena. If they can figure that out, I think that would be helpful too. But yes, I am all for getting calls right faster, and just moving this thing along.
Yeah, my experience before was the PVF did that. They would show it instantly up on the big screen in the arena too. So all of the fans, the video they did use for replays was very poor quality. So hopefully they were seeing better stuff on the small little tablets that they were using. So that's the one kind of step they need to hopefully take to remedy. But you mentioned the pace of play too, and our friend Avid will speak to this too. But I've been. I just felt very slow. Nebraska's 4-set match yesterday took 2:20. It took 2:30 for the Texas Wisconsin match to go 4. So
it's challenges and it's timeouts. I don't even think it's like super long rallies that are doing it. It's the non-volleyball parts that we've put into volleyball that is dragging this out. And that's one thing that the Bolt 6 replay system or the Hawkeye system is supposed to speed up. You don't have to argue over line calls and replays. There's just fewer replays too. You're not challenging Skynet more than you're challenging, a line official.
Yeah, they did have a service clock in Louisville, but I didn't notice it. I noticed a couple times too, but I don't think it really affected anything or really kind of forced teams to speed up. Is like an 8-second serve clock. So we'll see. Hopefully they can get things going and get more high definition replays to speed those calls up and get the clock going. So we'll see how it kind of plays out over the next couple of weeks, and if we can get the pace of play going a little bit quicker.
Yeah, we're going to get the pace of this podcast going a little bit quicker. That is our show today. Thank you for joining us for our very first show. Now that the 2024 volleyball season has started, we thank Hurrdat Sports for creating a platform where we can talk about volleyball and create this great community. And we're happy that you're part of this community as well. You can reach out to us on social media, interact with the show at volleyballpod, or email volleyballstate@gmail.com. And if you are interested in getting your business involved in this volleyball community too, and in front of our great listeners and support women's sports and the sport of volleyball, we would love to talk to you and see if it makes sense for you to partner with Volleyball State. You can contact Brianna at hurrdat.com. Again, that's Brianna at hurrdat.com to see how you can partner with us on the show, or hey, just reach out to us at volleyballstate@gmail.com and we will connect you with the right people to talk to join your business with Volleyball State. Also, subscribe and review. If you're going to listen to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or the Hurrdat Sports YouTube channel, leave us a nice review, subscribe to the show, tell a couple friends. And, this sport just continues to explode all over the place. We just watched an 11:30 a.m. serve on Big Fox on a Sunday for two of the biggest names in the sport. Like, that doesn't happen a couple years ago. And so we're going to continue to ride this wave and do our small part to push it along.
For sure. And speaking of that, I was hoping that the first set of Stanford, Minnesota would end, but it's 24-23 Minnesota in the first set. I was pace of play, but you already know the result of that match by the time you're listening to this. So congratulations on the old breaking news. But follow us on social media on Lincoln_VB. He's at by Jeff Sheldon. Thanks again to Kahm Broham for producing today's show. Thanks to Hurrdat Sports. Buy our merch. We got great merch available on the Hurrdat Sports website. You can also follow Hurrdat Sports on social and YouTube. And that's it for this week. Thanks for listening and keep living in the volleyball state.